I was what folk call a traveling athlete slash college student. Started off with football, went through the Citadel process. And then while I was there, I knew at an early period that Omega was what I wanted to become a part of. But I had this burning desire that something inside was saying Benedict College. And so after finishing my studies at the Citadel, I went to Benedict, completed a degree, got a commission, and pledged Omega Psi Phi, and had no real understanding for almost 40 years why that burning desire was, but I just felt I had to go. And ironically, there were brothers who were part of the ROTC program and others who watched over me, helped me. Epsilon, we celebrated our 75th 4 years ago. We're getting ready to celebrate our 80th next year. I had the pleasure of, during my time at Benedict, having all of the charter members of our chapter still alive. And so was able to talk to bros 47, 48, 49, and so forth. And in fact, for periods after we went over, our pro flights knew that our charter members were going to fly in and they were going to spend time with us over several weeks to impart in us. And while that was a great thing, we also had the challenge that Brother Zach Western, charter member, worked at Benedict for almost 50 years. We had Lund C. Richardson, who was the president of Mars College all of our time. Both of them were very strict and stern, and their expectations were high. And seemingly, no matter how high we got, that expectation seemed to grow further. And then having a person like Benjamin E. Mays speak into your life, it was profound. But the completion of that story was, as we were preparing for the 75th, presenting brothers who had gone to Omega chapter to the Brotherhood, the person who I presented to the Brotherhood 18 months ago found out was my father. Omega Psi Phi has been invaluable in my life, even my military career, going through the point of leaving the military as a colonel of infantry, having been the senior DOD representative to the Greek and Italian Olympics, working with the embassy, being a general's aide several times, 2-star, 3-star, having the opportunity to command and serve in unique units. Brotherhood has played a very instrumental role in the successes I had, even in my own company that I ran in Afghanistan and Kuwait, and even as a risk officer for AFLAC, even learning the difference between the corporate environment and attitude and way of life / culture. I am blessed to know the individual who is our fraternity brother, who is now the president of both AFLAC US and AFLAC Inc. Other than the chairman, Dan Amos, he is the guy that runs that ship. And being able to go to him and say, am I doing this right? Or what I'm providing you from a risk perspective, operational, enterprise, global, is it what you need as the leader? And if it isn't, I need you to tell me that it isn't, and tell me in the manner that you need to tell me. Because I want to make sure that I represent me well, but I also want to be a key asset to the team that supports you. And understanding that it is just as important to help others succeed as it is for your desire to succeed. We have multiple generations in Omega right now. We have generations in Omega who have grown up in a different technological environment. They evaluate things differently. They utilize those things differently. And I believe that we've got to build an Omega. And I'm only speaking from Grand KRS position, because that's the only one that I'm seeking to have responsibility for. We have to build and transform our organization into the fraternity's key administrative asset and command center. My slogan, Omega 35. In 2035, when many of these young men are going to be the leaders in this organization, that we have built the infrastructure. We have done the assessments to determine what the needs and requirements are. We have identified the policies and procedures that would execute that. And then based on that assessment, we have now selected the technology that enables whoever's sitting in this seat at every level to be able to perform the service that the Brotherhood deserves, that in our heart we want to give to the Brotherhood. And at the same time, we're able to serve and assist the Grand Basileus in accomplishing his vision and goals. This is what I've done in the military. This is what I've done with AFLAC. This is what I did in Afghanistan and other organizations when we helped identify what that government needed to look like, and then built the infrastructure. And I was a mentor for the equivalent of our Secretary of Defense. It's important that we get this right. And I'll be the first to tell people that technology does not drive doctrine. Doctrine should drive the technology based on an assessment of what the needs are. And when I talk about that holistic review, I'm looking at every process and procedure associated with the Grand Keeper of Records and Seals position, the district and the chapter Keeper of Records and Seal position, in coordination with and in evaluation of our Constitution, which outlines what those duties are, to determine whether those now 100 and almost 20 years later are still the right ones to fit the environment of today through 2035. And if they do and we are not following them, ensure that we get back in compliance. But also we need to evaluate if how we do business now is not in contravention to the Constitution and bylaws, but would require a constitutional change to those duties and descriptions. Then we have an obligation to also do that. And almost 120 years old, we haven't done it yet. My risk background is a great background for that, because we look at people, processes, then technology to identify what is the operational global enterprise risk and identify what could create that risk, and then put in place procedures, policies, and other mitigating strategies to ensure that risk does not happen. I think we do a great job in the fraternity evaluating the risk from a fiduciary standpoint, from a legal standpoint. But I think we do need to focus internally to ensure that this office, which is so important, that serves the Brotherhood, that holds our data, that protects our seal, and ensures that information is accurate and properly secured so that it is able to fill our archives and our history, so that those who come behind us can read and see those things.
Welcome to Prepare For Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Terry L. Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or a rising entrepreneur. This week, we're sitting down with Jonathan Griffin. Jonathan, what's going on, team?
Brother, everything is lovely. I'm blessed to be here. The Lord has been good to me, and I'm not afraid to tell it.
Amen, brother. I want to give you the opportunity to unpack your journey. Where did it start for you?
I grew up in Lancaster, South Carolina. I'm the grandson of full-blood Cherokee Indian and a grandmother who is Catawba Indian. And so I grew up in that type of an environment. And while we are Native American, we were a multicultural, multi-race family. The Evans family is one of the largest tribes in the Cherokee Nation. And that tribe comes with all hues, creed, color. And I was blessed to be exposed to all of that and learned a great deal of who I am as a person from that. My father's side of the family, they are also of Native American heritage, but also of Ghanaian and Western Bantu people's heritage. I've learned with Grandma, we call her Mama Griffin. We learned a lot of things about her upbringing. And so I just think I had a full childhood with room to grow and didn't really knew I was poor until it's time to go to college.
So once you went to college, you attended Benedict College. What was that experience like?
I was what folk call a traveling athlete / college student. Started off with football, went through the Citadel process, and then while I was there, I knew at an early period that Omega was what I wanted to become a part of. But I had this burning desire that something inside was saying Benedict College. And so after finishing my studies at the Citadel, I went to Benedict, completed a degree, got a commission, and pledged Omega Psi Phi, and had no real understanding for almost 40 years why that burning desire was, but I just felt I had to go. And ironically, there were brothers who were part of the ROTC program and others who watched over me, helped me. Epsilon, we celebrated our 75th 4 years ago. We're getting ready to celebrate our 80th next year. I had the pleasure of, during my time at Benedict, having all of the charter members of our chapter still alive. And so was able to talk to bros 47, 48, 49, and so forth. And in fact, for periods after we went over, our prophytes knew that our charter members were going to fly in and they were going to spend time with us over several weeks to impart in us. And while that was a great thing, we also had the challenge that Brother Zach Western, charter member, worked at Benedict for almost 50 years. We had Lund C. Richardson, who was the president of Mars College all of our time. Both of them were very strict and stern, and their expectations were high. And seemingly, no matter how high we got, that expectation seemed to grow further. And then having a person like Benjamin E. Mays speak into your life, it was profound. But the completion of that story was, as we were preparing for the 75th, presenting brothers who had gone to Omega chapter to the Brotherhood, the person who I presented to the Brotherhood 18 months ago found out was my father. And so it began to make sense. And how I found that out was we were doing testing on my oldest grandson, who is high functioning autistic, just wanting to make sure we were doing the right thing. And it came out. And so my oldest son, who is frat, he calls me and says, "Dad, are you sitting down?" He said, "I need to tell you something." He broke the news. I laughed. And he said, "You're taking this really well." I said, "Well, I was raised by my grandparents from a very, very early age. Before I was 1 year old, I knew there were some issues, but I tell everybody I had the greatest father figure in the world. And the person who helped raise me, who I am named after, he was a hardworking man. He was in ministry, pastored for almost 50 years. So I was nurtured and cared for and pushed in different ways by all of them. But the mere fact that I grew up in an extended family where your aunts, your uncles, my great-grandparents lived to be in their hundreds. To have all of that influence in your life, and it was active. Corporate punishment at times was appropriate. It helped shape a lot of things in me, to include the thought process of, from these red clay hills, I've got to rise. The reality of that is, and the truth in that is, I knew I needed to accomplish something because the farm was about to kill me.
I gotta get up out of here.
And so I spent 16 years trying to get off that farm. And the real truth of the matter is, I've now spent the last 50 trying to get back.
So not only was it how you were raised, but the fraternity helped mold the man that we see today. And I also know not only did the fraternity play a huge role as well as your family, but also your tenure in the military. And I know that was quite extensive. So talk us through what that was like and all of the places that took you.
I was in the military between my enlisted time and commissioning time for just at 29 years. Was blessed because the Lord allowed me to live in Pharaoh's house and have some assignments to learn things that ordinarily I wouldn't have learned. I was an infantryman, which I love being an infantryman, ranger. I love being a ranger. The Army, I say, saved my life because there was a period in my life where I was living on the edge, and living on the edge kept me sharp. But also, that environment of living on the edge, I learned how to manage that mindset of living on the edge and make good risk decisions associated with living on the edge. But then at the same time, there were a lot of brothers in the fraternity who helped shape me and help correct me. And I've just always been a person who a person could tell me I was going the wrong way, and I would do that evaluation and realize it and always go back and say, okay, I agree, so help me, because I'm not intentionally going the wrong way.
Right.
I just need your help. And I'm thankful that there were fraternity brothers, both on the enlisted side and on the officer side, who were instrumental in shaping me and many of my successes. And I'll tell you a short story. When I showed up at Fort Ord, California, ultralight, a new type of unit, minority officers were not doing well. I showed up, my first interview with my commander, the whole topic of his interview, the battalion commander, was how people thought he was prejudiced and he wasn't. That was a very challenging moment for me. Mm-hmm. Because I have always believed that if that was the topic of your conversation, I got an issue here.
Right.
And when I got to the point, and I was always not afraid and sometimes arrogant, but I was not afraid. I closed my notebook and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Sir, I need to go tell the brigade commander I can't stay here." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Sir, our whole topic of conversation had nothing to do with your expectations of me, what you thought of my reputation, because I know you've checked me out, the job assignment you were going to give, and so forth." I said it was all about being prejudiced. And he sat back and he said, "But I don't want you to go." I thought about that. And what spoke to me really strongly was my grandfather told me, if you spend a lot of time looking for something, you'll find it.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
He said, but in looking for that thing, you may miss out on the greatest blessing of your life. And I sat back and I said, "Sir, just because you said that, I'm going to stay." I said, "But I am committed. I study my craft and I will not fail you on any mission. I just need you to promise me that you'll give me a fair opportunity to prove that I am a quality officer and soldier." Those are moments where folk who never even knew what my future might be, but the things that they spoke into my life that I was able to rely on. But I'll be honest, after I got out of that meeting, I went and found this guy by the name of Colonel Promotable Lay, who was coming into Fort Ord as the assistant division commander of support. I ran to him as fast as I could. I said, "Sir, I think I'm in trouble." He sat me down. And this is funny. I'm going to tell you what he had me do. He said, 81, assume that you're still a lamp. See it through.
Right.
Made me recite it. I recited it. He said, Invictus. I recited it. And then he said, "Now I want you to tell me somebody said it couldn't be done." And what he did really was it took me back to a point where in my mind's eye, I was carrying that block. Mm-hmm. And I looked at that block and my hands were shaking. They were numb. I could see the finish line, but didn't know if I could hold it. And it was at that point where the process quit being about the challenge to you from our pro flights to having you do things that they had caused you to learn, and it began to make sense and helped us get through that process. And even in Ranger School, I went through 6 Ranger buddies and then finally got a brother, we call him Rican Dog. He stayed in the military, then he crossed over to another 3-letter organization. I got to see him at the 9th District meeting, had not seen him in 32 years.
Mm.
And we laugh about the fact that what got us through Ranger School, they called us Mutt and Jeff. They couldn't break us because we leveraged everything that we learned through that process and poems to get us to the next day. And so Omega Psi Phi has been invaluable in my life, even my military career, going through the point of leaving the military as a colonel of infantry, having been the senior DOD representative to the Greek and Italian Olympics, working with the embassy, being a general's aide several times, 2-star, 3-star, having the opportunity to command and serve in unique units, and to be shaped by a set of core values that has sustained me up to this point in my life, even when we encounter the challenges that you know that we have with life, community, and brotherhood. I feel very blessed and honored that 3 undergrads and an advisor understood a prophetic summons from the grand bosses of the universe to create a movement that has changed not only brothers' lives, but lives of many, many people over the years in this community, and continued to summon that clarion call up until the day that they entered into Omega chapter, but yet built that spark, inculcated that spirit, and encouraged us through their actions to continue the legacy of this great organization.
Bruh, I couldn't say it any better, man. All of the ways that you were able to articulate that to the viewers and listeners that may not be as familiar with the fraternity as not just the people who are in it, but the people who are members of the D9 or even people who attended an HBCU. There's many people that I come in contact with that they don't fully understand the importance of the D9, our fraternity and other fraternities and sororities, how we have poured so much into the community through the individuals who are part of these organizations. You embody the excellence that we're all striving to achieve, and it's carried you through all of your steps. I like to say that our steps are preordained, but sometimes the enemy, who I'll choose to call the devil, he will try to infiltrate our forward movement through fear and doubt. But when you go through those things, such as entering into the fraternity, such as being someone who's serving their country, regardless of the branch, it really forces you to dig down deep and see it through. As you know, I pledged, but I didn't serve our country, but my father did. And my father, his nickname was Sarge. He was that disciplinarian, not just in my home, but in the community. There were many people in my community, they may not have had a father figure, but my father would always embrace the opportunity to pour into those young men and show them the importance of hard work. He's 91 years old, so his measure of a man is how you labor.
That's
So
right.
if you came to my house, we had a basketball court. If you wanted to play basketball, if you wanted to play football in the front, you could do that. But you wasn't doing anything unless we finished that work in the back, whether
That's
it was mowing the grass, whether it was moving firewood from one portion of the hill to another, digging ditches. And what it did is it taught my friends and me and my brother, who's also a bruh, it taught us the importance of hard work.
Yes.
And one of the things he taught me, and this is a lesson that I live by today, I might have been 7 or 8 years old. He said, if you start something, don't quit. And that was something before I even knew of the poem See It Through. I knew when I started my journey in spring 91, I was able to tap into that. The fraternity just gave me more things to tap into, but I came there already pre-programmed with the mindset, I'm not going to quit. Not only did this serve me well during that process, it's continued to serve me well. And it's clearly served you well because whatever we put our minds to, we can do it. To show up in the room as a natural born leader, as a force multiplier. And not only are you showing up in a way that people can appreciate, but people around you are looking at you saying, you know what, if Jonathan can do it, so too can I. Let him pour into me. You understand that people poured into you to get to where you are, so you're willing to pour into them. If we want to quote the African proverb, if you want to get somewhere fast, you can get there alone.
Right.
But if you want to get somewhere far, you have to go with others, whether it's through your military service, how you've been able to continue to serve in the fraternity in a multitude of different capacities. And I want to get into that. You're not just in the fraternity, but you've worn a multitude of different hats at the highest of levels. I know that your military service has taken you all over the globe, including Germany and other places. But talk me through not only when you found yourself in these different places, how important it was for you to tap in with the bros, but then more importantly, how to show up in those circles as a leader.
So let me begin with the brother piece. When I went to different assignments, I've been in 5 districts, 8 different chapters, the majority of my time, Theta Rho in Germany. I've also been in Lambda Mu Mu in Toronto. I found it important as a settling and a positioning and as a stabilizing force that whenever I went to a different place, when I found a brother, I knew I was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew that I could share intimate feelings with my brother and know that his response was going to be a response out of love. It may not have always been soft.
Mm-hmm.
It may not have been the response I was looking for, but I learned to understand that the brothers who cared the most for me were not the brothers who always told me what I wanted to hear or to make it easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also learned that no matter what I was going through, be it in the unit, be it in my family, be it in life, that there were brothers that I could turn to who would help me through those challenges. When I had my first child, I didn't know nothing about being a father. I had good examples, but there is a big difference between seeing the science called example and understanding the art of parenting.
Right.
And there are many times where I had to go to older brothers to get information, and sometimes they put me through a test to determine if I was worthy to receive what they could give.
Mm-hmm.
And whether I was willing to humble myself
Right.
to get what I wanted from them. The brotherhood has always been a settling effect for me. Again, at times I was arrogant because at times I was the only minority officer in the type units that I served in.
Right.
There were times when, I had been selected for things that others had not. I had to learn how, through humility, to still carry that, but yet be able to relate. And then the biggest thing was I had to learn not to believe my evaluation report.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes there are very flattering things, but you had to still be true to who you are, because the one thing is you can lie to everybody else. You can fool everybody else. You can't fool that man in the mirror. He knows. And he knows. And so the brotherhood played a strong role in that, in helping to settle me, but also those brothers who had already performed those jobs that I performed. They could sit you down and give you wise counsel as to how to maneuver your way through situations and circumstances that you had not faced before, as well as give you the history of the environment. I can't say enough about those who were willing to do that, because sometimes it was at times when they really could have been doing something else. And so my brotherhood experience, while I've had some challenges with some brothers, we all do, I learned to value brothers, value the opposite opinion of brothers. And the brother I value the most is who will give me a candid response to the answers that I'm asking. Or when he sees me going astray, pull me to the side and say, no, brother, even if it was calm yourself.
Right.
Calm yourself. So Brotherhood has played a very instrumental role in the successes I had, even in my own company that I ran in Afghanistan and Kuwait, and even as a risk officer for AFLAC, even learning the difference between the corporate environment and attitude and way of life/culture. I am blessed to know the individual who is our fraternity brother, who is now the president of both AFLAC US and AFLAC Inc. Other than the chairman, Dan Amos, he is the guy that runs that ship. And being able to go to him and say, am I doing this right? Or what I'm providing you from a risk perspective, operational, enterprise, global, is it what you need as the leader? And if it isn't, I need you to tell me that it isn't, and tell me in the manner that you need to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to make sure that I represent me well, but I also want to be a key asset to the team that supports you. And understanding that it is just as important to help others succeed as it is for your desire to succeed. And those are lessons that I've learned from my teams all the way up to 3 years ago when I retired in my 60s. And I'm still learning, because I'm now learning Josh, second vice grand bossless. We developed a relationship. I'm running for office. And I was like, Josh, man, I'm sending this stuff out. Are the undergrads getting it? He said, bro, Griffin, can we talk? I said, yeah, bro, Grand. We went and talked. Josh sat me down and said, we see what you're sending, but we don't do Facebook. We don't do it. And he said, and y'all write too much.
Right.
So I'm learning from that young man who just graduated from college, who was able to give me wise counsel on how to construct my social media. And so it's just been a process of development, and the frat is still teaching and helping me understand how to bridge the gaps.
Thinking about starting your own business? Make it real with Shopify, the all-in-one platform trusted by millions to sell online and in person. Whether it's merch, art, or digital goods, Shopify gives you the tools to build, grow, and succeed. And here's the best part. When you sign up using the affiliate link in our show notes, you're supporting Prepare For Takeoff and starting your business off right. Click the link and start your free trial today. One of the things you touched on, bruh, is humility. Humility is extremely important when you want to grow. You have to humble yourself to say, I don't know, and ask somebody for help. And that's something that we learned, the importance of humility, when we were going through that process of becoming a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And that's something that we have to continue to carry if we want to continue to grow. You can never become so wise that you become a fool. When you're trying to have continued success, then you have to incorporate everybody in the room, not only your peers, but maybe the contemporaries of your children.
That's
because
right.
if they're at boots on the ground, if you will, and they have a pulse of what people are saying, you have to be wise enough to listen. And the bros will keep it real with you. You have to have thick skin. You can't take it personal. And more importantly, you have to understand that the bros have your best interest in mind. No matter how it comes out, some bros may not necessarily have the same tact as others, but just know he has your best interest in mind.
That's
and as I mentioned, being in the fraternity is like having an extended family.
That's right.
And you have to know that your aunts, your uncles, your mom, dad, siblings, they all want to see you succeed. The bros are no different, because when you succeed, we all succeed. I know you're running for an office that has distinction, to say the least, to it. Before you set out to run for Grand Keeper of Records and Seal, there are a multitude of different positions that you held in the fraternity to prepare you for this moment in which you're running for office. So talk our viewers and listeners through what some of those have consisted of and how that's prepared you for this moment.
So 5 districts, 11 chapters. I've held leadership in all of those districts, all of those chapters. But in 7 of those 11 chapters, I've been a keeper of records and seal, which when we use layman's term, that's the office with the smoke.
Right.
Everybody's not interested, and many people dodge it because of the level of work that is required. But they don't realize that performing that position, you learn what everybody else is supposed to do and how your position impacts every member of the organization. In undergrad is the only level in which I was not a KRS. I was a vice bossless and a bossless. I've been financial my entire 45 years. Even while on active duty, I held positions in the chapters, be it a military, as we say, a military chapter, which is nothing more than a chapter near the military base,
Right.
or a chapter that had no association with a military base. But what's uniquely important is I've held that particular position, bossless, vice bossless, keeper of records and seal, keeper of finance, multiple committee chairs. I've done it both in a domestic environment and in an international environment. And so I am the only candidate who really understands the unique issues associated with meeting the fraternity's requirements in those environments, because each of those environments has a different set of constraints and limitations that we have to innovate and find our way to meet the requirement. My KRS experience culminated at the 13th district level, where I was the 13th district KRS. I was 13th district KF, Keeper of Finance, 13th district first vice district representative. And obviously I was elected as the 6th, 13th district representative. And I served from 2006 to 2010. And what's unique about that is domestically, most of our DRs are managing 2, 3, 4, 5 states, maybe. Mostly it's 2 to 4 states. As the DR of the 13th, and as Brother Graham Bossless, Ricky Lewis, has come back and told me on many occasions, Brother Griffin, I have a whole new level of respect for the 13th district and what you had to do, because during my time as the 13th district representative, we had 10 chapters, really a cross section of 13 countries. And we had brothers in almost 20 of them, be it being deployed from the US, and we would take responsibility and, check on them, send them care packages, to now the current DR, where there's 20 plus chapters across 20 plus countries. And we're getting ready to go into Jamaica here in October. We just chartered chapter in Montego Bay, and the chartering ceremony will be in October. And so it's a unique experience of trying to balance your love for the work of Omega, your duties in position for Omega, your duties towards the chapter, as well as your responsibilities that you swore an oath to as it applies to our nation and the defense of our nation and the protection of our nation against enemies, both foreign and domestic, and having in many of those years, having to deploy to exercise that oath that you took, understanding that every time you went, you could be one who would make the ultimate sacrifice for the nation. And ironically, when I was taking my unit into Kosovo, a frat brother who was the chief of staff of one of the training units in Hornfels, he had groomed me many, many, many years. And a couple times I was in his unit. In fact, I was an executive officer, brigade executive officer, operations officer for him in his colonel level command. Robert Fulcher is his name. He called me to his quarters and he said, I'm going to tell you something that I've never told you. He said, if it comes to a point where you have to make that sacrifice, he said, then that sacrifice has to matter so much that it changes the whole ebb and flow of that battle, and your soldiers benefit and come home. He said, that's the level of importance of who you are as a commander.
Mm.
It was uniquely different because up to this point, been always taught lead from the front. You're there, but to be told you're no longer that disposable guy. You're no longer that reckless living on the edge guy. You're now a guy who has to make sure that if that sacrifice is made, it was made because it was a part of a necessity to change the course of that operation, that action, and the mission. And so a lot of learning, a lot of growing up, but we were able to figure it out, which is why I think Omega Psi Phi Fraternity is the greatest organization in this world, because brothers, to be successful in this organization, have to learn how to exercise ingenuity to accomplish even that which most people say are impossible. We learned something, somebody said it couldn't be done.
Right.
But somewhere in that poem, he says, but he took on that challenge and he ended up doing the thing that others said couldn't be done. That's unique. That's unique. And regardless of the process the brothers are coming in, be it that process and the post-process training, we teach brothers that they've already had to exercise ingenuity just to make it through.
Right.
Most of us didn't realize we were so caught up in the process that we never understood what we learned, what we were taught in the process. Again, I can't speak any more highly of this organization, that I am emotionally bought into its principles, its challenges, its encouragement, but its vision and objective of lifting as we climb. But our relationship, more importantly, is based on a concept that before I can be your friend, before you should want me to be your friend, I should first be found friendly. Which tells me if I want to be your friend, I've got to demonstrate that so that you can trust enough in what I've done and how you've been able to evaluate my expressions of love in whatever form that is towards you, that I am worthy to be your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important to me. So those are the things between my positions in the fraternity, the unique assignments that I had where I've usually found myself in a unit that we had to transform or integrate innovative doctrine or equipment, in some cases to build a doctrine that's going to shape our future. Had an assignment as a major where in 1992, I was a part of a team which was doing what was called holistic review of the infantry. They basically looked at every aspect of this organization, but they looked at it in light of what type soldier will we need in 2000 to 2010? What type equipment? What's the policy? What is the doctrine? What is the technology? And we went through those processes. And of course, you don't like to be voluntold to be on a committee, but I'm glad I took it seriously enough to help identify that. And then come 2002, 2003, when it's my turn, what I inherited and signed for was the very equipment, soldier skill set, and all of that I had to defend our nation with, had to continue to train and prepare. And quite frankly, most of them couldn't throw a horseshoe. Most of them couldn't play baseball, was not athletic, and did not fit what we had determined the infantryman needed to look like back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But because of the technology that they grew up on, they had developed skill sets that we didn't have, like a unique hand-eye coordination. And so in the equipment where you now punch buttons to select target, select ammunition, they could do that much more rapid because they had that skill set. To include, my driver said, "Sir, just give the commands because I can gun for both of us." And he could. So why is that important? That's important because we have multiple generations in Omega right now. We have generations in Omega who have grown up in a different technological environment. They evaluate things differently. They utilize those things differently. And I believe that we've got to build an Omega. And I'm only speaking from Grand KRS position because that's the only one that I'm seeking to have responsibility for. We have to build and transform our organization into the fraternity's key administrative asset and command center. My slogan, Omega 35. In 2035, when many of these young men are going to be the leaders in this organization, that we have built the infrastructure. We have done the assessments to determine what the needs and requirements are. We have identified the policies and procedures that would execute that. And then based on that assessment, we have now selected the technology that enables whoever's sitting in this seat at every level to be able to perform the service that the Brotherhood deserves, that in our heart we want to give to the Brotherhood. And at the same time, we're able to serve and assist the Grand Basileus in accomplishing his vision and goals. And so that's why I ran. This is what I've done in the military. This is what I've done with AFLAC. This is what I did in Afghanistan and other organizations when we helped identify what that government needed to look like, and then built the infrastructure. And I was a mentor for the equivalent of our Secretary of Defense, but I also was on the combat line mentoring brigade and battalion commanders as they went out to engage the enemy. And there were times where being there as the advisor, you are a part of all that. And so it's important that we get this right. And I'll be the first to tell people that technology does not drive doctrine.
Right.
It should drive the technology based on an assessment of what the needs are. And when I talk about that holistic review, I'm looking at every process and procedure associated with the Grand Keeper of Records and Seals position, the district and the chapter Keeper of Records and Seal position, in coordination with and in evaluation of our Constitution, which outlines what those duties are, to determine whether those now 100 and almost 20 years later are still the right ones to fit the environment of today through 2035. And if they do and we are not following them, ensure that we get back in compliance. But also we need to evaluate if how we do business now is not in contravention to the Constitution and bylaws, but would require a constitutional change to those duties and descriptions, then we have an obligation to also do that. And almost 120 years old, we haven't done it yet. My risk background is a great background for that because we look at people, processes, then technology to identify what is the operational global enterprise risk and identify what could create that risk, and then put in place procedures, policies, and other mitigating strategies to ensure that risk does not happen. I think we do a great job in the fraternity evaluating the risk from a fiduciary standpoint, from a legal standpoint. But I think we do need to focus internally to ensure that this office, which is so important, that serves the Brotherhood, that holds our data, that protects our seal, and ensures that information is accurate and properly secured so that it is able to fill our archives and our history so that those who come behind us can read and see those things. And I'm going to stop on this. 2 Supreme Council planning sessions ago in the parking lot, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Green, I think we got off at about 4:00 in the morning Eastern. And one of the things that we talked about was culture and tradition. So we identified that we need a core value system that links the 2026 brother to the founders and those of us who are here, but we also need to document the challenges that the brothers who have served in these positions have faced and what caused them to make the decisions that they make, so that we build a leadership library brothers can consult and gain guidance, even from those who are at Omega chapter, to help them continue to keep this organization on the path that was envisioned by our founders and the brothers who have served before all of us.
Your tenure in the frat and your tenure as someone who's served your country at the highest level, who better to serve as our grand KRS than you? That's how I see it, bro. You was able to connect all of those dots, and you've already operated on an international level as the DR for the 13th district. You've had KRS positions on every level. And I know you already have a working relationship with people such as the Grand Basilisk, Brother Ricky Lewis.
Yes.
So to be able to understand all of what comes with that position and the pressures of it, and to be able to have that dialogue with them, because I know you guys have a history that extends back to when you were a neophyte.
Yes.
So you clearly understand and realize what's going to come with a position of that magnitude. A lot of brothers may feel decisions may have been made that they may feel somewhat alienated by. We have to figure out, how does this serve us all? How do I humble myself in listening to people that may be my son's age?
That's right.
And then listening to what maybe my peers may say that I may not necessarily want to hear, but let me adhere to that. And then more importantly, how can I embrace all of the things that's going to have me tap into my ingenuity in saying, let's embrace technology. Let's embrace all the things that can ensure that we're operating as a world-class 2026, not just organization, but a world-class 2026 corporation.
Yes, sir.
And all the things you mentioned, it speaks to that.
I talked to the Brotherhood. Why is this important? Experience matters. I've done this for organizations much greater size and of much greater reach than the fraternity. I've managed billion-dollar budgets. I've had to transform organizations, both civilian organizations and military organizations. And that transformation always included developing the transformational pathway and requirements for a future. We're building for the future. Do I know what that looks like at this moment? No. I'm not going to try to figure it out myself. I've already begun to work with brothers to lead committees. This is an organization. Our fraternity is a fraternity of brothers. I want to involve the brothers in helping to determine where we go with this, because I have nothing against the brothers who are working and are helping currently, but I still believe that there's brothers out there who these are their skill sets. These are their key assets. And getting them involved to help identify this, I think, is important. Other thing that I've talked to brothers about is I want to establish, I don't know if we call them gray beards, purple beards, gold beards, but I want to establish a group. I want to pull in the former Grand Keeper of Records and Seals to be advisors to us as we build and look at where we need to go and evaluate. And in some cases, some of them that I've talked to has already volunteered to lead certain aspects of that. The last two unique things, AI, I've used AI in the military, but I've also used AI in corporate America, where we've done things like on applications, we use bots to do that initial evaluation, and we increased our efficiency and our effectiveness at greater percentages of 90 to 98%, depending on where they were. And in some of those, especially like claims, where there was about a 30-something% efficiency rate, in a matter of a short period of time, now you're operating in a 90 to 95%, and you're meeting your goals that you've set in terms of responsiveness. And I've told the brothers, we're going to introduce metrics. You're not going to have to subjectively determine how well we're doing. I've asked brothers to hold me accountable as I hold you accountable, because we're going to establish metrics to look at responsiveness, accuracy, efficiency. And quarterly, we're going to do a scorecard on each other. I'm going to give the DR an evaluation of his teams while I'm asking the Brotherhood to evaluate what I am doing. And finally, I recognize that everybody does not want to be the Grand Bossless.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does not want to be the first Vice Grand Bossless. But there are folk who love this thing called Keeper of Records and Seal, because they love the challenge of helping brothers. They love the challenge of helping them move their organization. So what we're going to do is we're going to establish an internal certification to train those guys internal to the fraternity through the Bernal Kulan Academy. But we're also going to conduct a professional certification where brothers will be able to receive CV credits. Yeah, we understand that there's some continued work that goes along with maintaining that. But what I want to do is build a pipeline of administrative experts that the fraternity can pull from for positions like this, so that it becomes not a subjective evaluation of the bros based on a 7-minute campaign talk, but it's based on, now we've got a pool of brothers who are certified both internally and externally in the administrative aspects of what our organization needs. So we now have a pool of experts that we can turn to for these types of things. So yeah, it's a lot. And brothers have said, bro, you're trying to do a whole lot. And I said, it is a whole lot. But what I'm trying to do, I had the same challenges in many other jobs. And the key is I don't have to know everything. But as a leader, I have to understand and establish the vision, the goal, and then select the right people to help bring that vision together and accomplish those goals. I just believe the more we involve brothers and other experts, and if I provide the right guidance, the right leadership, the right motivation, we'll get there. And that's why my slogan is, together we're stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Brotherhood is stronger. The more we include the brothers, the better we'll be, because every brother has value and every brother brings a perspective to the table. So Omega 2035 is what we want to do in our initial terms to get the fraternity structured for the future.
This episode of Prepare for Takeoff is brought to you in part by Riverside, the platform that I trust to record studio quality podcasts right from my laptop. With Riverside, I get crystal clear audio and 4K video. Plus, it's super easy to use. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, Riverside helps your podcast sound amazing. Try it out for yourself. Click the affiliate link in our show notes and start recording like a pro with Riverside. And I love how you mapped everything out and how you were able to connect all of those dots as far as your strategy. I think it's brilliant. We have a global organization and we want to make certain that we are attracting the best of the best, no different than if we were running Google, if we were running Microsoft, or fill in the blank. We have to see ourselves in that same light because we have some of those same individuals operating in those same capacities in the private sector, some of those same individuals operating at the highest levels in positions in the military, same individuals operating as entrepreneurs. As W.E.B. Du Bois would say, the talented 10%. The bros are the talented 10% as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
And we have to continue to show up in that capacity.
That's right.
So ordinarily, when I close out, I ask our guests to leave us with 3 things that they feel will help our viewers and listeners prepare for takeoff. I want to ask you, what are 3 things the fraternity can do to continue to help us prepare for takeoff?
The first thing is I think we need to develop a core value system, which helps us continue to develop and maintain a culture that epitomizes our traditions and the traditions of our founding. And so when we lose our way, as we do from time to time, we have a core set of things that will bond us again one with another. The second thing is I am really passionate about developing a professional development within the organization. As I spoke with Brother Grand on that call that I mentioned earlier, a couple of Supreme Council meetings ago, he asked me, well, how do you inculcate core values? And I said, using the military, we start at basic training. Well, we start at initiation. And then as we develop leaders, as we develop brothers, because we don't know who's going to be the grand boss list, we need to have a professional development process where at certain periods of their frat life, not just necessarily positions, but at certain periods of their frat life, there are things that we're teaching them, even if it's leadership skills, even if it's effective communication, be it written or verbal, be it strategic planner. I'm a strategic planner. I'm a trained strategic planner, did that for the military many, many years. So we have the ability to execute a professional training, professional education system within the organization. And then finally, I think the third thing is we need to establish processes where brothers understand what true friendship, what true brotherly love is all about, and understand that it's not just physical, but it's spiritual. And when we look at 2 of the most favorite biblical characters to develop, for one who was born to be served, to realize that that was not going to happen because of something his father did, and to establish an eternal relationship with one who was born to serve, but who is now become the better man and will be served, to still have the ability to say, may the Lord watch between you and I while we're absent, one from another. And for the one who was not born to be served, but served and became the one who, because he served the king, became the king and was served, found out one day that there was a little crippled boy out there. And the Bible didn't really quite tell us how he found out, but somehow he found out about it. And when he inquired, he found out that this young man came from the lineage and family of his friend, Jonathan. And that day he had him moved to his kingdom, moved into his palace. And the Bible says he ate from his table for the rest of his days. Brothers need to understand that this is not a game. It's not a toy. This is an organization that can shape and change the destiny of people. And the Bible says that people perish for lack of vision. Corporate says organizations succeed or fail based on leadership. I think those are the things that allow us to take off. And when we begin to land those planes, America will be shocked at what Omega has to offer that's been percolating all these years. And now we're ready to become who our founders saw us as: leaders, men of high intellect who don't give up, but in so doing, they achieve so that they can inspire others to achieve while they are yet lifting them as they achieve. That's very emotional for me because I spent years when my son, who's in the frat, was on one side of the world while I was on the other side of the world. And I had to depend that my love and my heart and the vibe, and when I say vibe, it's not just the movement, but the heartbeat of this organization, that without asking, brothers were going to make sure that my child was okay. And guess what? They did. To whom much is given, much is required. I yield.
I really feel and believe the men of Omega, we were tasked with the responsibility of lead. We wanted to see ourselves as leaders on the yard, and we continue to lead in the community, and we have to lead globally. We have to set forth, as you mentioned, a strategic plan that maybe many others in the D9 will see fit to follow. Because there's so many different things that we know our reality to be that it troubles us. We can talk about how difficult it is. We can talk about all of the problems. And when you hear people talk about, even, for example, let's boycott this organization. Let's not do this. Let's hold our money in our pocket. Okay, what's the plan after that? So we have to come up with a plan, bro. And you clearly have a plan. And it's the executable plan. You've already have a well thought out strategy and how you're going to incorporate all of the brothers to make it as inclusive as possible. I think that's very important. And bro, you have my vote, to say the least.
And can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
I always want to leave an environment where I leave an example for others to follow. I'm Brother Jonathan Griffin, Sr., 3 Epsilon Epsilon 81, or 381 Epsilon Epsilon, correct way. But I want to give honor to my DR named Brother Freddie Thompson IV and the 13th District Leadership Council, who are continuing the great work of Omega, continuing the great work within the 13th District, which I'm so proud of because of where we've come from. We are blessed to have every DR of this district still living. Why is that so important? It's so important because I am the first member of the 13th District to run for Grand Officer. And when I'm elected, Brother DR Freddie Thompson IV will be the first district representative to yield a Grand Officer to Omega Psi Phi. This is a history-making moment. I'm running to do the work, but I'm asking brothers to honor the work and my plan. But when I'm elected, the person who gets the honor is going to be my district representative who made the way possible for it to happen. And so I just wanted to give him that shout out and that respect.
Bro, how can they continue to tap in with you, the brothers that are listening and the brothers that want to learn more about your story and your plan? How can they find this?
The brothers can go to my website at jgriffin4grandkrs.com. I have a very extensive website, gives you a lot more insight into who I am as a person, a former soldier, a fraternity brother, a father, a minister, and one who wants to always be considered a friend. They can go to our Facebook page where they can look at our literature, scan our QR code if they want to partner with us, as well as provide donations as we continue grinding through the tape over the next several weeks. The district meetings have stopped, but the campaigning has not. We're not resting on our laurels, and we're just asking the brothers to get with a movement that says one fraternity, one purpose, one legacy. Together we're stronger, with the vision to build the infrastructure for Omega 2035.
It's an honor and it's a privilege to have you on our platform. Wish you much continued success, not only to you, but to your family as well.
Thank you. And I appreciate the connection. We didn't know our connection. We knew our fraternity connection, but we didn't know that we have a beloved spirit and heart for an individual who went over the same time you went over and has done so much for my institution, Dr. Artis, who I have the utmost respect for, and that we even can link even across fraternal relationships, and realize that we have linked in with just good people.
Absolutely. I was honored to go to your school and watch the rededication of the administration building. And in fact, you were in attendance. We hadn't had the opportunity to meet yet. I remember saying, bruh, remember when somebody had a birthday, Dr. Artist, my sayings called the person up and they had to circle and he started to turn up. He was like, bruh, I remember that. I said, bruh, that was me.
Yes, sir. Much success to you, my brother. Blessings to you, your family. And I am humbled that you would think it not robbery to give me the opportunity to reach the brothers in a different way at a larger audience so that they could understand who I am and why I am persevering to achieve this office on behalf of the fraternity.
We wouldn't have it no other way. Brother Griffin, must continue success to Benedict, must continue success to my sons, Dr. Artist. An honor once again to have you to unpack not just the fact that you're running for a position of such esteem, but to be able to lay out the plan as you would if someone was running for a governor's position in the great state of South Carolina. Bro, you mapped it out.
Thank you. And we're going to be at your homecoming, that lady that I snuck out of West Virginia, when I told her the connection, she said, put it on the calendar.
I appreciate that, brother. We look forward to having you and rolling out the purple carpet. It's our centennial. We're celebrating 100 years, Theta Psi. So, bro, we're going to make certain that you and your family is well taken care of. So I look forward to seeing you in October.
Yes, sir.
And, bro, not only do I want to thank you, I want to thank our viewers and listeners, whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're watching us on Spotify, or you're listening to us on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Audible, iHeart, or Pandora. As you know, every week we're going to continue to bring you proven professionals or rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations, just like this one, will help you prepare for takeoff. Brother Griffin, thanks for joining us, Q.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Take off.
Roo.